Welcome again to Getting to Work. It's the podcast of NCI Works. I'm John Spencer from Starbuck Media. I have a fascinating guest today. We're going to talk about motivation, but we got some other things to get through first. Dr. Brian Hite is our guest. He's got a doctorate in performance psychology. He's a certified mental performance consultant, and he's a stuntman. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You must be fun to take to cocktail parties.
I don't know. I guess you'd have to ask the people at the cocktail parties about that.
Well, first and foremost, we got to get into the stuntman a little bit. We'll get to the motivation and the reason why you're here. But I mean, that's got to be what everybody asks first, right? For the most part.
Well, yeah, when they find out I'm a stuntman, the questions that usually come are, who have you doubled? Like, what famous people have you worked with? What's the craziest stunt you've ever done? How many times have you been hurt? These are all questions that come up regularly. And the answers are, I don't know who's considered famous these days. You got your own idea of famous, and maybe I've worked with them. I really have no idea. I haven't been hurt that often doing stunts. I've been hurt doing other things that have nothing to do with stunts. I've had several surgeries, but not really because of anything I've done on set. And probably the craziest stunt, the answer that I give to that question is, I was doing a movie called Drive Angry, and it was a car hit on fire. The car was on fire. So when I got hit by the car, I got lit on fire as I went up and over the car. And so that one was a burn and a car hit combined. That one was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. And just another little backstory on Dr. Hite here. You actually dropped out of school to become a stuntman?
I did. I took the non-traditional path to doctorhood. I dropped out of college the first time around. I did, with one semester to go, to move to LA and be a stuntman. And that's what I did for 10 to 15 years. And I forget, I guess it was maybe 6 years into that career, I decided to re-engage with education, and I got my bachelor's, and I continued with a master's in sports psychology, and then just continued on with a PhD in organizational psychology. Not because I ever honestly thought that I would be working in a field related to any of that. I was happy doing stunts and thought I'd be doing stunts the rest of my life. It was just something I really enjoyed. I had a passion for the material. I loved learning, and I didn't want to stop. So I just kept going.
That's awesome. And I think the lesson for parents here is, if your son or daughter comes to you with just one semester left in school and says, I'm going to drop out and be fill in the blank, sometimes you have to take that leap of faith with them, right?
I don't know if that's the lesson I would tell my child, but it worked out in this case. So what do I know? I don't know. I do know that it would have been interesting to be a fly on the wall when my father, who has a doctorate in education, found out that I was dropping out of college with one semester to go.
You didn't even tell him personally, huh?
No, I told my mom. I let her handle that discussion.
Absolutely. I understand that family dynamic. Dr. Hite is a certified mental performance consultant, and your company's called Begin Again, correct?
It is, yeah. Begin Again Performance Psychology.
You've worked with the military, you work with a lot of sports athletes, right?
Yeah, I actually worked with the military. This is when I moved out of stunts and into what I call a real job. When I was working with the military, I was doing essentially sports psychology with soldiers, and that broadened into other areas that encompassed resilience and leadership training and culture development, a lot of different areas. And that was really interesting work. I did that for about 10 years. And then last year, I decided to leave the Army and just open my own business and have my own consulting business that I have. And I do. I work with athletes from a variety of sports. I work with performers from a variety of activities, actors, singers, dancers, musicians, stunt people. And I work with businesses still, with some executive coaching, as well as leadership development, career transitions, things of that nature.
And that's kind of where we're going to take this today. If you think about the sports industry as a whole, multi-billion-dollar industry, they've spent a whole lot of money and realized that psychology is kind of important here. And I think maybe finally it's starting to trickle into the workplace, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, in the workplace, they're typically called soft skills. That's in the organizational setting what they're referred to as. But really, what it comes down to is something that I believe very strongly in, and that's a holistic approach to well-being, and that holistic approach to performance overall. In other words, if we engage people and we really focus on people as a system, a physical, mental, emotional, social system, then we're going to get the most out of ourselves and others. If we're leaders and we can set conditions for all of those different components of people to be fed, so to speak, we're going to have happier people. We're going to have people who persevere through challenges. They're going to be much more engaged. They're going to lean into the work, and they're going to have more fun at the jobs. Burnout goes down, turnover goes down, and performance goes up. So I think that a lot of organizations are starting to see the benefit of really looking at more than just evaluating people in terms of how many widgets they put out, and really getting into, okay, what are the conditions we can set that allow people to be at their best more consistently for longer periods of time?
All right. There's a whole lot to unpack there. And we settled on kind of one thing to talk about today, and that being motivation. And that you kind of lit up when we started talking about that. And it's one of the number one problems many of us face individually, personally, and of course, in the workplace with your team.
It is a big problem. I'll tell you that in classes that I did with the military, inevitably, when I asked the question, what is the biggest problem that you encounter with the soldiers you lead? The answer was always motivation. How do I get these people to do what I want them to do? Like, how do I get them motivated? How do I get them to just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do? And to be perfectly honest with you, I mean, it's a legitimate problem, but it's the wrong question. The right question to ask is, how can I, as a leader, set conditions for motivation to occur? Because we can't, as people, motivate anybody. I can't motivate you. I have no control over you, but I can set conditions in terms of the environment that I create, the culture that we develop, the interactions that I have with you, the type of communication we engage in. Through all of that, I can set conditions for motivation to happen. And that's really where I spent a lot of time with these leaders, is helping them to understand not only where levels of motivation come from, what affect levels of motivation, but also the quality and type of motivation. What is the source of motivation? In other words, why do you care about what you're doing? It turns out that that really matters.
That's really the most important thing, isn't it? The
It's
why.
yeah, well, here's what the levels of motivation. This is usually when people talk about motivation, what they mean. Somebody's very motivated or they're not motivated at all, and we want to know how we can get levels of motivation up. And according to one theory, I'm not going to go into all the details of all of the theoretical academic side, but really what it comes down to is the extent to which we believe we can be successful at a behavior is going to influence our motivation to engage in that behavior. And the extent to which we care about that behavior will affect our motivation levels with regard to that behavior. So if motivation levels are low, two places to look are, does the person believe that he or she is capable of doing successfully what you're asking them to do? And does that behavior matter to that individual for some reason? And a third area to look at too is a cost benefit analysis, because I might believe that I am capable of succeeding. I might even care about the behavior. It might matter to me, but the cost of engaging in that behavior might outweigh the benefits in my mind. And if that's the case, my motivation levels are likely to be low. So if you're a leader and you have people that you lead and you're asking the question, good Lord, how come I can't get these people motivated? Sometimes as leaders, at least this has been my experience working with the Army, leaders tend to lean on, they just don't care. These people just don't care. I need them to care. And that may be a problem, but it might also be that the people just simply don't believe that they're capable of doing what you're asking, or that the benefits in their minds simply don't outweigh the costs.
Yeah, that's a great points. One of the things that we've tried to do here at Starved Rock Media is, I refer to it as round peg, round hole. Find out what you want to do as a team member here, and then encourage you to do more of it and reward you to do more of it. So you get they care about the job. And yeah, from time to time, fascinating. You mentioned the time cost deal. You run into somebody who seems to enjoy it and they're getting extra money for it, but at the end of the day, they still go, I just don't want to.
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple things in that I think are worth talking about is a term that came to mind is match quality. That's a term that comes to mind. So just trying in terms of what sport an athlete's going to play or what job somebody's going to engage in. There's a book called Range by a guy named David Epstein that I think is a fantastic book that kind of gets at what you were talking about of, if a kid's dropping out of school to go do something completely different. Essentially, the argument is that we should sample a lot of different things before settling on one, with the hope that we will maximize match quality in terms of what we do, and allow for that motivation to come from internal sources, because it's just something that's right for us. That's one thing. But it's also you mentioned rewards, and that's an area I would like to touch on a little bit, because I think a lot of leaders lean very heavily on rewards and even punishment to what they call motivate. I refer to it as manipulation, because from a self-determination theory standpoint, it's a controlling source of motivation. Meaning, if I am doing something in order to get a reward or to avoid a punishment, it has nothing to do with me caring about the behavior itself. The behavior itself means nothing to me. It is only the external source that's motivating me, the reward or the punishment itself. So there are ways that, yes, you can get somebody to do what you want them to do with rewards, but there's some research out there that shows that if somebody's like what you described, the match quality is high, they are in areas that they truly enjoy, and then you try to motivate them more with rewards, that you can actually diminish and undermine the intrinsic motivation that individual had. So that's one potential problem with rewards. Another is that rewards are often used to boost motivation, to help increase motivation. But rewards can actually be counterproductive in that way in a couple different senses. One is, let's say that you have a team of people and you offer a reward and you say, you know what, the top 5 people who in this group who do whatever, I don't know, the top 5 people who finish first, the people who rank in the top 5 after whatever, they get this reward. Well, if there are 20 people in that group and, everybody's looking to their left and right, and they think in their minds, look, there's no way in this group of people that I'm going to get in that top 5, that person's motivation is likely to go down. Why? Because of what we talked about before. Expectation of success is going to influence the motivation. So in that sense, if you tie the reward to the behavior and the person thinks, well, there's no way I'm getting that reward, motivation is likely to be undermined. Also, if you set rewards for, okay, if you sell 1,000 of these things, then you get a reward. Well, that person might be capable of selling 1,000 things in the first, 5 minutes. That may not be a challenge for them at all. But if the only reason they're selling things is to get a reward, they will sell that 1,000 things and then they will stop. They will not sell 1,001. So you can actually limit performance by offering rewards. So rewards there are ways that rewards can be used effectively. For example, rewards can be used effectively when they are unexpected, when they are a form of feedback. So if somebody does something great over and above, you want to recognize them, you can offer them a reward that they didn't do the thing to get the reward. They had no idea the reward was coming or even an option, but you gave them the reward, and that serves as a form of feedback. Look, I really appreciate what you did. You went over and above. It is noticed. Thank you. And the military does a great job of this with at least the Army. I don't know if the other branches do the same thing, but each unit has a coin. It's called a coin. And when a certain soldier does something over and above that the leaders want to recognize, the leader will put a coin in his or her hand and then bring the soldier up, shake the soldier's hand to transfer the coin from the leader's hand to the soldier's hand. And that's how the process happens, while making it clear to everybody watching what it is that they are rewarding that soldier for. And that's a great way to use rewards, because the soldier isn't getting the reward because he or she sought the reward. It's just simply a form of feedback. So that's one aspect. That's one way that, as I mentioned before, the source of motivation is important. If the reason we're doing something is to get a reward or to avoid punishment, that's a very fickle source of motivation, because if rewards disappear or the threat of punishment goes away, so does the behavior. So if what we want is sustained motivation over time, we have to tap into those internal sources of motivation, those things that really drive people from within. And there are concrete ways that leaders can do that.
And I suspect that and we're going to run out of time here before too long. I suspect there are any number of ways and materials out there to help, and you may even actually have some of those materials available yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I'm working with units, or groups of, and when I say unit, I mean any kind of group, a team that's an athlete or business organizations at whatever level. Yeah, there are absolutely things that leaders can do. For example, if leaders allow choice for their people, they have an intent, the leaders have an intent, they have something they're trying to achieve, and they communicate that to their subordinates, but they allow the subordinates to accomplish that mission in any way that they want. They can go left, they can go right. It doesn't really matter, as long as at the end of the day, the intent of the leader is met. That's one way. Another is to encourage people to take initiative, to be okay being creative, to encourage creativity, to encourage people to go outside the box. Now, in order for that to happen, leaders have to be okay with failure. They have to be okay with people screwing up. They have to be okay with learning, along the way through things that don't go quite right, but encouraging that initiative being taken. Another thing that leaders can do is to communicate feedback in an effective manner, meaning focusing on those things that people can control: their effort, their attitude, their strategies, their choices of behavior. These are all things that people can control. So when providing feedback, if we focus on those things, people can move forward the next time around and either re-experience success if the feedback is, hey, great job, or experience success the next time around if they failed the first time. So there are some very concrete steps that leaders can take, and through over time, they can create this what's called an autonomy supportive environment, or a culture that really fosters intrinsic motivation to do what the leaders would like for the people to do. That's absolutely something that leaders can help set conditions for.
And at the end of the day, I think for most leaders, that's what we're interested in being as productive as we possibly can as a group.
Yes, and the definition of productivity can change. So if success, again, is number of widgets, that's one thing, but it can also be level of engagement. It can also be turnover intention. It can be organizational commitment. There are lots of different measures for success that leaders can choose to adopt, and creating this motivational climate that fosters internal motivation will affect all of those. So not only are you going to get better performance, more performance, you're going to get people who are happier performing, and people who will overcome challenges much more often because they are capable of persevering more easily than those who just simply don't care. They just, it's not important to them.
If somebody's interested in finding out more about this, Doctor, where do you send them first and foremost? And I'm assuming you have a website as well.
I do, yeah. I mean, if you want to, my website is beginagainperformancepsychology.com. You can go there. I offer free sessions, free consultations take a look at what it is that we offer. If it's something that you're interested in, happy to have that conversation with you to see what the best route forward for you might be. If you're interested in motivation, some sources that I would recommend are the two gurus of self-determination theory are Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. So I would look them up.
Okay.
Daniel Pink, in his book, I want to say Drive, he does a good job. I mean, that's basically self-determination theory, but put into popular language. So that's a good book to look at, with some good theoretically based advice on motivation as well.
All right, fantastic. Now the question again, what was the movie that the stunt was in where the car was on fire and then you were on fire?
Yeah, that was Drive Angry. But
Drive
again,
Angry.
I think I told you that one. I don't even know if that stunt made it into the movie. It's the guy who got hit by the car after I did made it into the movie, but I don't know that mine did. But I did.
Horrible to go through all that and end up on the cutting room floor.
You know, you'd be shocked at how often it happens. But I'll tell you, I did have the opportunity to double Aro, the character Aro in the Twilight film, the very last one, Breaking Dawn. So at the very end, there's this big fight, turns out to be imaginary, but I don't know, it was a month and a half worth of imagination
for us
on set creating it. But that was a great fun opportunity to be able to do some stuff on that show too. So
all right,
I don't know, there are there are a lot of fun things with that. But yes, my website, beginagainperformancepsychology.com. And
wait for it. Here we go.
I have a book that came out in October. Begin Again, Utilize the Wisdom of Eastern and Western Ideologies to Achieve Your Full Potential. It's a book designed to be read, just little 2 to 4 minute chunks, read once a day. It's one of those, once a day books that again, I really try to bring together that holistic philosophy I mentioned earlier: physical, mental, emotional, social, and draw from Eastern, Western philosophies and religions to come up with some just tangible, real world, easy to implement advice for common issues that people encounter every day. So
fantastic.
You can check that out. That's on Amazon as well.
I will look it up. Begin Again, and the website beginagainperformancepsychology.com. And
Yes,
if you want to see a movie and see a big action scene and go, I know that guy, it's Breaking Dawn, the big fight scene at the end.
Big fight scene at the end. Big backflip right off the bat to start the fight. That's me.
All right. Coming in hot. I love it. Doctor, thanks for your time today. Great stuff. Hopefully get a chance to talk to you again down the road.
Oh, I hope so too. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Dr. Brian Hite, our guest today on Getting to Work, the podcast of NCI Works for all things employment, job-related works in North Central Illinois. Go to nciworks.org.